Okay, so this video covers Dr. Gerald Stevens' Intro Greek Primer book, chapter 4, which is on page 43. So, with this video, we're going to be introduced to the noun system. And in fact, you're going to cover the entire morphology of the Greek noun system in just 3 chapters. That's chapter 4, 5, and then 7, if I remember correctly. You're going to learn everything you need to know basically about the morphology of nouns, how they look. Okay, so here's a quick sort of walk through chapter 4 and kind of overarching understanding of the Greek um, noun system. All right, so remember, Dr. Stevens is going to say around page 43, Greek is an inflected language. It uses conjugation. Okay, and we saw that with the verbs, with the present indicative active and present middle passive indicative so far. It works the same way with nouns. And again, I said this in a previous video and probably in class that we do this to some degree in English. So, for example, if I gave you the word book and I said, that's singular, book, give me that book. If I said, hey, how do you make that plural? You don't think about it, but you would actually conjugate the word. You would change the spelling of the word. And in English, you primarily, though not all the time, you do this by adding the letter S, right? Sometimes you notice there are some, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there are some words, depending on how they end, you would add an ES at the end and not just an S to make it plural. So what we're actually doing in English is we're morphing the word. We're conjugating the word. So Greek functions a lot of the same way. So in Greek, a noun is indicated as a subject or a direct object, or its function in the sentence is indicated not by its position, but by its spelling. So, for example, in English, you get subject, you get verb, and then you get the object. If you have one, you don't always have an object in the sentence, but word order determines the meaning. So if I have a noun here, say ball, and I know I keep using this example, but it's easy to see, and I have hit, and I have as an object me, I know that the ball, which is a noun, and the me, which is a pronoun, it's a noun, but a pronoun. The ball is the subject in my English, not because of the spelling, but because of the position in the sentence. It comes first. It comes prior to the verb. And in English, that's how we indicate subject versus object, by position. I could take the same words and swap them and put me hit or I hit the ball. And in that case, notice ball doesn't change at all. If I put ball here, then it's the object, even though the spelling is exactly the same. So word order, and for nouns in English, word order determines how it functions in a sentence. Sometimes we conjugate them if we want, but not all the time, to make them singular or plural. Well, in Greek, we conjugate to do everything. So they change the spelling of the words in order to indicate its function in the sentence, but then also to indicate a number of other things, whether it's plural or singular or that kind of stuff. So the spelling is going to be the key with nouns. Now, on the bottom of page 43, he talks about noun case. Here's what you have to know, because you're going to see this paradigm over and over again. When it comes to functions, or how nouns are related to the words in the sentence, how it functions in the sentence, there are, in English, we have 3 cases. In Greek, there are 5. We tend to think of it as 4, but there are really 5 cases. And so he's going to introduce you there to nominative. Nominative we generally think of as subject. In the English, we think of it as the subject of the verb. But nominative, what it does in function, a noun that's in the nominative case, it names. If a noun is in the accusative case, it extends the verb. It's usually, we think of it as the direct object or direct object. If a noun is in the genitive case, it shows possession. So and then you have various roles: subject, direct object, things like that. So in Greek, as he says at top page 44, there are 5 cases. Now, when he talks about case arrangement on page 44, not 43, I think I said 43, but the top page 44, when he talks about case arrangement, he's talking about the paradigm, how the paradigms are going to look to you. So every time you get a paradigm, and you're going to get one example on page 45, table 4.2. Every time you get a paradigm, you're going to get nominative, you're going to get genitive, you're going to get dative, accusative, and vocative. You see that? Now, the reason I said earlier, though there are technically 5 tenses, you're going to tend to think about 4 out of the 5 the most of the time, is because this vocative doesn't always get listed in every paradigm. And the reason is because the vocative, I want to say all the time, although there's always some exception somewhere, I know, vocative is really, it looks the same as the nominative. It's functioning differently, but it looks the same. In other words, every time you get a paradigm for a noun, remember the paradigm endings, oase, omanente, usi for present tense? There was always that paradigm, first, second, third, singular, first, second, third, plural. Remember that? Oase, omanente, usi, first, second, third, singular, first, second, third, plural. Well, just the paradigm, the way grammarians do the paradigm. When he says case arrangement, this is what he's talking about. Every time you get a paradigm of a noun in all of its various forms, you're going to get it in this order. So he shows you the order on page 45 in table 4. I have my phone covering part 4.1 and 4.2. That gives you, notice you get the nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and then the vocative at the bottom. Now, nominative case, that was 3 and M. I just realized I misspelled that. I knew something was wrong when I was spelling it. Nominative names, we generally think of it as subject, the way it's rolled in the sentence. Genitive, it shows possession. It does a lot more than that. You're going to find out later. But generally speaking, it does possession. And we usually translate it of. Like when we say it's the book of Dr. Del Rio, we don't really say that. We say it's Dr. Del Rio's book. Well, the book of Dr. Del Rio, or the book about Dr. Del Rio. In the Greek, that would be, those two examples would be in the genitive, and it's showing some sort of possession. If a noun is in the dative, it's usually the role it's playing is the indirect object. I hit the ball to him, and to him is the indirect object. I'm not directly hitting him, I'm hitting the ball, but he is, the to him in that sentence is receiving indirectly the action. That's dative case. Receiving the action of the verb, though indirectly, not directly. Accusative is usually seen as the direct object, extending the verb action to some degree. We call it the direct object. When I was in that earlier example, I hit the ball to him. Ball is the accusative. And if I were to write that sentence in Greek, I hit the ball to him. Every one of those nouns, or let me change it a little bit. The player hit the ball to him. The player would be in the nominative case, have nominative endings. If I were to say the player hit Bill's ball, Bill would be in genitive case. The player hit Bill's ball. Ball would be in the accusative case, to him in the dative case. Vocative is the case of address, when you're addressing somebody. So if I were to take that sentence, the player hit Bill's ball to him, at the very front, if you say, well, how do you put a vocative, make up a vocative and put it in that sentence, it would be Tommy, like you're calling somebody. Vocative is address, like, hey you, Tommy, Bill hit the ball, or whatever. So it's an address. When you call to somebody, you're addressing somebody. That's vocative. It's the case of address, of direct address. So now that's the arrangement, and that's how that's the 5. What's going to happen is, because the spelling for the vocative is always the same as the nominative, which means you're going to go, well, wait a minute. If a noun in a Greek sentence, the vocative and the nominative use the same ending, how am I going to know the difference? Guess what the answer is going to be? Context. The only way to know is context. And it's usually pretty clear, so we don't worry about this one. So 9 times out of 10, you're going to get your paradigms, your noun paradigm, your noun arrangement with these 4, and they just drop the vocative. Just know it always looks like nominative. Now that's case arrangement. That's how the paradigms are going to look. Let's talk about endings. In the Greek in the Greek noun system, there are 3 kinds of endings, and then each of those types of nouns are 3. Notice on page 44, he calls them declensions. Declensions is a word that means endings. You know, when he says the Greek substantive, that's Greek nouns, have, I'm reading here right off of page 44. When he says Greek substantives have three declensions, what he's saying is Greek nouns have three types of endings. That's what he means. Three declensions, three ending patterns, okay? And we call these patterns of inflection. Same thing, patterns of inflection. There's a first pattern, there's a second pattern, there's a third pattern. Here's what you need to know, because you're going to look at each of those chapters and you go, wow, there looks like a lot more paradigms than just three. Well, each one has some variations, but there are three basic kinds of Greek nouns, three basic kinds of endings or inflections, and each one of those is going to have some variations. So what's going to happen is, in chapter 4, he's going to deal with the second one, what we call second declension. In chapter 5, he's going to go back and deal with first declension. And then in chapter 7, he's going to give you third declension. You go, well, why does he do it in that order? Almost all grammarians do this because the second declension actually is one of the easiest to learn. And so they kind of introduce you to the noun system by giving you the second declension. Now, if you look on page 44 and 45, and 46, and a little bit on the 47, that's the second declension. And these are nouns that have two types of sets. So the second declension has two types of endings, two sets. One set for masculine and feminine and nouns, and then one set for neuter nouns. Okay, so masculine and feminine nouns, and these would, if you go, well, what makes the different declensions? Like, why three inflection patterns for nouns? The answer has to do with the endings of nouns. So for the second declension, these are all nouns that end basically with the omicron sigma. We're going to find out in chapter 5, when you get into first declensions, these are nouns that end with an alpha or an eta. In other words, depending on how the noun ends, there are a couple of basic endings. You have the three different kinds of endings. So second declension are nouns that have a certain ending or pattern of omicron sigma. So you look at page 45, 4.1, and with the first set, he's going to give you the masculine, feminine endings. He calls those second declension endings set 1. And you notice what he's done there. It's right there on your page. So you've got nominative, right? He's going to give you the pattern: nominative, genitive, dative, and then accusative. Okay, I'm going to abbreviate them moving forward. So subject, possession, indirect object, object is a simple way to kind of think of them. And then you get the pattern for singular, because you have singular nouns and then you have plural nouns, right? So for a nominative singular nouns, they're going to have this on the end of the noun, that kind of an ending. And then oi, if it's plural. So O and then OU, and then omicron, iota, and then omega nu. Now, and then your plural would be oi, own, ois, and then us. So omicron, upsilon, sigma. So this chart here, which is, I just wrote out 4.1 on your page, this is nominative, singular, plural, which means I'm going to have the noun stem right here and a noun stem here. So what is it you're really having to learn? You're having to learn these endings. You're having to learn, well, every time I see this on an, every time I see, for example, omega with the iota subscript on the end of a noun, then I know I've got a dative singular, and I'm going to translate it as a dative singular. Now, the way you translate these, or think about it, if I have a nominative singular, it's just the word. So in 4.2, he's giving you an example. You have, I'm going to erase this for the sake of space here. So in chart 4.2, he's giving you a word, log, right, which is the stem. Let me write it in a different color here so you can kind of see it. Log, which is the stem. And in the lexicon, in its dictionary form, it's always going to be listed as a nominative singular. If you look this up in the dictionary, the Greek dictionary, you're going to get it as logos, which is word. I mean, it's translated message or word. So logos is nominative singular. If I see this, and this is what we call the stem of the noun. This is the stem. This is really just the ending. And that ending is going to change. So I've got lagu, lago, and lagon. Lagan, sorry. Lagas, lagu, lago, lagan. Okay? And each one of these endings would then dictate how you translate it. So if it's nominative, it's like a subject, you would just translate it word. Or if it's plural, words. If it's lagoi, okay, then it would be words. If it's lagu, it's of the word, or of the word, usually we say, or of a word. Here, if it's plural, it's, and you see it on your chart there, of, or sometimes it can be translated from. You're going to find out the genitives, in intermediate Greek, you're going to find out they have about some 30-something nuances. Okay, you're just given the basics here. Of or from the words. And you go, well, how do I know if it's of or from? Context. And you're going to find out later, there are actually more than those two. Okay, but of or from the words, plural. This would be in dative, you would say to, in, or by, one of those three. Again, variations. Extending the verb. I say he was hit by the ball. I hit the ball to him. I hit the ball by using a bat. By using the bat would be in that sentence, bat would be like an indirect object in that prepositional phrase. So what we're actually doing with the dative is we're adding a preposition to the translation. So here, lago would be like in, to, or by a word. Lagois would be to, in, or by words, plural, because I've got the plural ending. And then for the dative, it would just be word or words. Word, or if it was lagus, it would be words, plural, because these are the plural endings. So you're basically memorizing these endings, and any word that ends with one of these is going to be masculine or feminine. And the way you know masculine and feminine, you say, well, how do I know if it's masculine or feminine? The vast majority of second declension nouns are going to be masculine. A few are feminine, not many, and you only know it, you have to memorize it with the word, and you'll only know it in its vocabulary, in the vocabulary list at the end of your chapters, or in any Greek dictionary, like the one at the back of your textbook. You're going to get a list of the word with the article. You haven't learned articles yet. You'll learn them in chapter 6. But what you'll find out from articles is the Greek article has a masculine form, a feminine form, and a neuter form. Okay, so what will happen is in the vocabulary listing, they'll give you the article with it, and by knowing your article, you know this is a masculine. So for example, turn to page 52, and look at that vocabulary for list there. So that first word is angelos, angelos, not angelos, angelos, because it's an omicron, not an omega, angelos, and then you see that O right behind it, it's translated messenger or angel. But you see that omicron, ha, with the mark, you haven't learned it yet, you'll learn it in chapter 6. That's an article. That's a Greek article, and it's a masculine article. So the only way to know if a word is masculine, a second declension is masculine or feminine, is to know the vocabulary. It's connected to vocabulary, and you look at that in the list. Now, the second set of endings, which is on page 46, is the neuter set. Same concept. What you're going to be doing in the neuter set is learning. These are nouns that are neuter. They're not masculine or feminine. They're neuter, and they have their own set of endings. So for nominative, and you see this in, he has it on 4-3. He also has it inflected with a word. Work, argon, which is to work, or just work. I'm translating it like it's a verb. It's not to work. It's just work. It's a noun. So these are your endings for neuter. I knew I did something wrong there. Okay, omega. Omega nu is always going to be genitive plural. There's some things, it looks like a lot of patterns to look, but what you're going to find out is that omega nu is always going to be genitive plural, which is going to make it a lot easier for you to learn down the road. And then this is A. Now, these are the endings for second declension neuter nouns, okay? And so like the first set, the second set, and you see in 4:4, he's giving you a little bit of an example there by using the word erg, which again, erg is the stem or the root of the noun, own, and these are the endings. And so what you're going to see is this word erg, and if I say it in its lexical form, or dictionary form, erg on means work, and then erg means works, plural. Erg means genitive of work or from work. Ergon means of or from works, plural. Forgot to do this. There's always iota there. Ergo, it would be, that's dative, so it's to, by, or in work, or to, by, or in works. If it has this plural ending, you want to put the S on it. Now, this is the neuter pattern. So you're memorizing two sets. You're memorizing that first set on page 45 there, set 1, and you're learning and memorizing the second set on page 46. That's basically what you're learning in this chapter. You're learning two sets. One is for masculine and feminine, and one is for neuter. A couple of observations, you go, wow, that's really a lot of sets, and I'm only one. Once you got these two sets, you got 1/3, and in fact, most, I'd say about 1/3, or maybe a little bit more of the entire noun system in the Greek language, which is a very common one. So notice a couple of observations. These, if you look back at set 1 on page 45, you're going to see what they call the interior cases. These are exactly the same, so you're not learning anything new. And then these are different than set 1, but notice how they repeat, which means you're going to go, okay, so if I have ergon, how do I know if it's nominative or if it's accusative? Guess what I'm going to answer? Yep, context. Context is the only way to know. So this doesn't happen with all the nouns, but this happens with second declension. Well, it's going to happen again, but you're going to have some repetition here with this neuter, in that you're not going to know unless you look at it in context whether it's accusative or nominative. Now, last thing before I end the video is location. Remember, you had to locate or parse. Parse is another word for locate. The parameters of the verb. Remember when you were asked to locate a verb, you had to give those 5 different parameters plus the lexical, the tense, the mood, the voice, the mood, the person, number, and then the lexical dictionary form. You're going to do the same thing with nouns. So, but it's going to be less parameters. So a noun has 3 parts to it. If you think about it, it has its case. It has, which is nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and maybe vocative. That 5th one, which you rarely see in charts, that's case. It's going to have gender, is it masculine, feminine, or neuter, and then it's going to have singular or plural. So take this one, erg on. If I asked you to locate or parse that, you're going to say that it is nominative / accusative, because you won't know. So I usually do something like this. If I were to locate that, if I were to locate this one right here, erg on, I would say it's nominative / accusative, because it's going to be either one. I would say it is neuter. You go, how do I know it's neuter? Because I know this is the neuter ending pattern. Everyone that has this is going to be neuter. Okay, and I know it is the singular ending. So it's nominative, accusative, neuter, singular, and it comes from the lexical form, which is ergon. Okay, so and if I had ergo, let's say I had this one, it would be genitive, neuter, singular from ergon. And if I had ois, let's say I had ois, and I said locate that, it would be dative. You know, the case would be dative if I had this. Oh goodness, I keep doing that. If I had ergois, I said locate ergois, it would be, because I've memorized my paradigm endings here. I see that ois, and I know that is dative plural. So I'm going to say it's dative. I know it's neuter because it's a neuter ending. It's plural, and it's from ergon. Okay, so that's what locating or parsing is. I think that's everything. This video is going to be a little bit longer than the other ones because it's for chapter 5 and 6. It's exactly the same concept, just the endings change. Once you get the concept of the how the paradigm is formed with nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, vocative at the bottom. Once you understand cases, once you understand that you're going to have a singular and plural set of endings, chapter 5 and chapter 7 are the same thing, but with the different declension endings. So I'll put that in a separate video for you.